why would the UCI want to do this? It's very simple. They want complete power. They want to give nothing out of their hands. And anything that is not under their total control will not be approved as being valid.
Everybody, welcome back to the Move Plus. I'm Spencer Martin. I'm here with Johan Bruyneel. This is our weekly update show, actually bi-weekly this week because we did a show on Monday to make up for a missed week. But we are going to break down some of the massive amounts of racing, pretty much all of it exciting that's been happening this week. But first, I want to take a moment to talk about our sponsor today, which is OneSkin. Dry skin, deep wrinkles, and just tired-looking skin. These are a few visible signs of aging. Something today's sponsor, OneSkin, knows all about. I'm not really overly concerned with aesthetics, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, but I do want to keep my skin healthy as I get older. That's why I love their topical supplements and creams that can actually help my skin feel and behave as younger as I age, which is really important that we do since we have the standard of Big George Hincapie. And when he's walking around the office, you want to make sure your skin, hair, and body is looking as good as possible because that guy is a specimen. OneSkin's creams are powered by their OS1 peptide, the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse your skin's biological age. And OS1 is scientifically proven to decrease lines and wrinkles, boost hydration, and help with thinning skin, which often comes with age. I did not know that before we got these documents from OneSkin. Pretty interesting. Don't just take my word for it, though. They've got over 4,000 five-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel-size products. Make 2025 the year you invest in habits that keep you and your skin healthier at the cellular level. If this sounds interesting to you, you're in luck because OneSkin is offering the Move listeners 15% off using the code THEMOVE at oneskin.co. That's 15% off using the code THEMOVE, spelled out THEMOVE, at oneskin.co, not oneskin.com. I've made that mistake before. oneskin.co. Use code THEMOVE at checkout for 15% off. You cannot pass that offer up. This is also important because I don't know about you, Johan. I'm not getting a lot of outside time. So I got to I'm turning into a mole person, just living in this basement. I'm going between my trainer and this podcast studio. So I've got to make sure I take care of my skin through this trying time of the year. But Johan, have you been keeping up on this racing? We have 3 races going on, 3 stage races. UAE Tour, that's a World Tour race. So there's some big names there. Tadej Pogačar, one of them. Ruta del Sol, which is called Volta Andalusia, but is also confusing because a lot of the signage at the races, Ruta del Sol, they got to tighten that branding. No one knows what that race is. And then Volta Algarve, which has Jonas, Vingegaard, and Primož Roglič. So we really have 3 of the world's 4 top stage racers in action this week. I'm going to run through just where we are in the GC, some recent results, and then we'll get your take on it, Johan. Bear with me, everyone. There's been a lot of racing. At the UAE Tour, since we last spoke on Monday, there's been 4 stages. There was a time trial on stage 2. Josh Tarling won. Stefan Bissinger was second. Tadej Pogačar third, 18 seconds back. Potentially the worst course you could ever draft up for him, and he did pretty well. Crushed every other GC contender. Stage 3 summit finish. Pogačar wins. Was basically sitting zone 2 the whole way up, and put down like 1,000+ watt sprint to win. Pretty impressive. Oscar Onley second. Felix Gall third. Both those guys looked really good. Stage 4, crosswinds, as you would expect in the desert. Comes back together. Pogačar was in the front split every time it split. Jonathan Milan wins an unbelievably long, flat. It was maybe the longest, flattest, straightest finish I've ever seen in pro cycling. You couldn't come up with a better course from Milan. He wins over Tim Malier and Jasper Philipsen. That's like the Sprinters World Championships right there. Today at UAE Tour, another sprint, more technical. Tadej Pogačar bridges up to the early break, I think just to get a workout in. He's got spring classics coming up. Can't be sitting on that peloton. But Tim Malier wins, a little bit more technical. Matteo Malalucci from Astana second. We'll talk a little bit about Astana. Malucelli. And they're everywhere. They're like a swarm of bees. Jonathan Milan third. Volta Algarve, stage 1. There's no results because the stage was canceled after the fact because they sent the peloton the wrong way. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. Stage 2, Jan Christen wins. It was a really tough uphill finish. Really, really good course, actually. Fun racing. His teammate João Almeida exploded it was maybe 200 meters left, and he just bridged out of the peloton up to his teammate. His teammate looked surprised and maybe not that pleased to see him. We'll talk about that too. Stage 3, sprint finish today. Crash in the final kilometer, unfortunately, but Jordi Mayos from Red Bull wins it pretty convincingly. Biniam Girmay second, Arnaud Dely third. Andalusia / Ruta del Sol. Stage 1, Maxime Van Hills crushes everybody, like drops Tom Pidcock, Tim Wellens, Pavel Sivakov. I think Sivakov was up the road. Wellens bridged up to him. They go to the line together. Van Hills wins. Sivakov finished 7 seconds back, which at the time you're like, oh, well, Van Hills is going to win this GC. What does this matter? No, stage 2 rolls around. Van Hills probably a little too active on the front. Pidcock takes advantage of that, attacks him about 43K from the finish line, rides away with a group on his wheel, including Pavel Sivakov. Pidcock wins the sprint. Sivakov goes into the GC lead because heads up riding both those 2 days. And am I missing any days? I think there was a sprint finish today at
Christoph wins some say his 97th victory in the pros. I've also seen somewhere it's his 99th. So I know that he wants to retire because it's his last year. He wants to retire with 100 victories at least. So he's good on the way. He's 37 years old. So good old Christoph still has it.
Yeah, he's my age, which Lance, I told Lance the other day I was 37. He didn't believe me, thought I was like 50. Christoph is the same way. I thought Christoph was 50 years old too. So he suffers from the same ailment as I do. That's why we need one skin, Johan. Get that one skin on us. But let's go back to UAE Tour.
Yeah, well,
I think Pogačar is going to win.
First of all, yeah, I think for sure he's going to win. Because the hardest stage is on Sunday. That's the hardest climb. The first climb was hard, but not hard enough. Typically, it's a selection of like 10, 15 riders. The way he won that finish was impressive. He got dropped off with like 200-300 meters to go. Then rode for 100 meters and then sprinted away from first position. I think everybody understands that on the last day it's going to be Pogačar. Because that climb is a lot harder, and typically there's a lot more difference on that climb. No doubt, in my opinion, that Pogačar, barring accident or something else happening, wins Tour of UAE. I would say not even trying 100%. They do have a strong team. It's everything for Pogačar, so. And I really can't see anybody else who can beat him. On top of that, today I think two of the top 4 guys crashed. Felix Gall and Pablo Castrillo. I think they were 3rd and 4th in GC. They crashed with 3.5 kilometers to go. They lost some time, so that's game over for them for the GC. So yeah, I mean. There's one thing I would like to point out, Spencer, about the Tour of UAE. We're always talking about organizers, UCI, riders, teams. I don't know if you noticed the time trial. The time trial won by Josh Starling with an impressive performance, 12-kilometer time trial. 2 things I want to point out. First of all, I'm really shocked to see the gears they're using nowadays. I mean, Josh Starling was, and make sure you're sitting down. 68 chainring.
That is unbelievable.
68. I mean, of course, and then in the back there, it's all, the purpose is to have a chain which is in line, probably on the middle of the cassette, but still, it's impressive. Now, don't know if you noticed the order of the time trial. Usually, and if in any stage race, if it's not the first stage, the time trial is to be the reverse order of the GC. For some reason, they changed the rules in the Tour of UAE because the weather report said that there was going to be a lot more wind at the end than in the beginning. Meaning that, and it would basically make it, and we saw that with the last guys, nobody even came close to a minute and a half. It would make a big difference if the favorites, who by the way were kind of forced to be in the front on stage one because there was a slight uphill, so they had to try to be in the front of the peloton in case there was gaps. They would have to go at the end, and they would be in a disadvantage. So, knowing that, the organizers of UAE went to RCS, who are the logistic partner, the actual organizers, the Tour of Italy organizers, and then the UCI approved this change in the rules that it was only the winner, who was normally going to be a sprinter, Jonathan Milan. He had to start last because he had a leader's jersey, but then the teams were free to put their riders at any moment. So they had slots, right? So if there's 20 teams or 18 teams, it's every 18 minutes, one rider. And so they had, and that's why the big riders for the GC, they went all at the beginning. Like all the favorites for the GC, they went early. And it turned out that it was the case that the last 30, 40 riders, nobody could even get close because the wind came up. And so, another example that the organizations and the organizers and the UCI, they can change the rules, bend the rules whenever it's in their best interest. This was against the UCI rules. The way it's written in the rules, there's only one exception that can be made if, for example, if there's a time trial and you have teammates that if you look at the GC, they're behind each other, then the organizers can put somebody in between, because otherwise, if it's teammates like at this time, then a minute behind and 2 minutes behind, 3 teammates, they could, in theory, say, okay, I'm going to wait for you. You can draft, or you can see the other rider as a goal and draft a bit, right? Then the organizers are allowed to put a rider in between. But it's the first time that I see this. I would, probably they're going to come up with some kind of explanation that it's an unforeseen circumstance, whatever, But anyway, they broke their own rules for the good of the race, because they want that one of the top riders wins the race. Ideally for them, it's important that Pogačar wins the race. But since Pogačar was kind of forced to be in front, at least in the top 10 in stage one, he was going to ride at the end. And so they just changed the rules. That's, I just want to point that out, that they can do whatever they want.
I thought that was weird. I couldn't quite figure it out because, Pogačar went early and it was almost raining by the end, which I'd assume is very rare. But so there's UCI rules, and then this might fall under something called the golden rule, which is whoever has the gold makes the rules. So I assume they wrote a check to make sure. It's a little, actually, I kind of don't like it, because then I'd assume there's someone that could have, like, let's say Matthew Riccatello. I don't know where he started in that TT, but I don't think he got the preferential treatment, and it probably hurt him quite a bit. But what do you think about, the leading out from the front on the uphill finish? Pretty impressive. If you ever have to lead out your own sprint and you can still win, means you're doing pretty well. Who do you think is going to get second and third at this race, if you had to pick?
Since Gal and Castrillo are now, I didn't check the GC now, but I think Van Eetveld looks pretty good. He won last year, so it's a matter of who can stay close to Pogačar until whenever he decides to take off, and then who can ride their own tempo. Normally I would have said, he must have lost time in one of those stages with the crosswind, but Jay Vine looked pretty good. He lost time, or he crashed, or I don't know what happened.
He's sitting 5th overall, great time trial. He did like a Mondo lead out for Pogačar. They were pretty shorthanded on that uphill finish, and then he sat up and got past. But second place is Josh Charling, 21 seconds back. Third is Ivan Romeo,
yeah.
Just one of these people that Movistar's plucked out of obscurity and is like, hey, now this is like a star and he's leading our team. Pretty impressive. They keep doing that.
Ivan Romeo.
Yeah. How old is this guy? Like 20 years old?
Yeah, he's 20 years old. He's world champion under 23 time trial. He's good. He's really, really good. Really good. I mean, looking at wait, this is not this. Today was stage 5, right?
Yeah.
So let's see the GC right now. Tarling, Romeo, Finn Fisher Black. I think he's the main contender. And then Ciccone looks good. Van Eetveld, Oscar Onley looked good also. I mean, he didn't do a great time trial, but he looked good on that uphill finish. So anyway, I think it's I mean, it's a race for second, right? I mean, whoever can be second is the best of the rest. Because Pogačar is going to take off, in my opinion. He should stop doing those crazy things like today, going in a breakaway. It's just for a joke, but you do spend energy.
Do you think it's a joke, or do you think he's training? Because
no, it was a joke. It was a joke. I mean, there's no way. There is no way to, listen, I mean, at the end of the day, he's there. He has to win this race, right? That's like, okay, not winning is a disaster. Having Pogačar there. And if he doesn't
they haven't won the last 2 years, so I'm sure there's a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. He's that much better than the rest, so he should win. But hey, don't do those jokes, because, it can explode in your face, I'm not expecting it to explode in his face because he's that strong, but it's amazing. It's amazing to see how he rides. He's so much better than the rest. Even in the bunch, you see. I mean, I've seen some footage from inside the bunch, like on my cameras, and everybody's there fighting, stressed, suffering. He's just cruising. He's cruising and joking. He's really, really good.
Stage 4 with the crosswinds, like when they I think it maybe was Soudal Quickstep trying to break it up, but it was too far out. It was like 60K out. Who's going to ride that whole way in? He was doing like 550, 600 watts, at the front of that race, staying in there. So like just that is mind blowing to me that he's that small and then can push like Spring Classics contender numbers.
Yeah.
Like, and then to give you an idea about how good he is, Josh Tarling was race leader going into stage 3, gets dropped, finishes 26 seconds back on that summit finish. He did 500 watts for the last 7 minutes. So that's about 6.6 watts per kilo for 7 minutes. And it looks like he's standing still. He doesn't look he's even going that fast. So, and I don't know if you've been looking at like some of these watts from Milan, like on stage 1, the guy did over 1,000 watts for 45 seconds in the sprint. It's unbelievable.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, Josh Tarling did 500 watts. I mean, I don't know how much he weighs. What do you think he weighs?
Like 74 kilos.
No. He weighs more than that. He's
tall. You think? I don't know. I picked him up at Roller Live. I thought he was in the mid 70s. I did not pick him up, but he's quite slight. It's funny because you think of like big guy.
Okay, Spencer, all these guys, like if you see them in normal clothes, they all look tiny, even Tarling.
Tiny.
But I mean, I would like to check, but I think he's closer to 80 than to 75.
Well, maybe, I mean, that would explain why he's getting dropped too. If he's 80 kilos doing 500 watts. That's more.
Yeah. Anyways, he's tall and he's strong guy. But yeah, I mean, still it's Pogačar, and he's, I don't even think he's 100% top shape yet. I mean, he doesn't have to be with these kind of, with this competition. I mean, not disrespecting anybody, but there's nobody close to his level here in this race.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope he's not top shape. That would be some mismanaged training probably if he came into this top shape. I was surprised people on like the YouTube comments on the highlights were like, man, clearly not as good as he was last year, like washed up. Like, what are you talking about? He's easily winning this race. And you would almost, I mean, the uphill finishes are good for him, but like that time trial wasn't good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, crosswind shouldn't be good for him.
He was still third.
Yeah. Like
beaten by two, ex-European champions, and I mean, I don't know about Bissiger, but Tarling was, third in the Olympics. I don't know if he was second or third in the World Championships didn't go well for him, I think. But
I mean, he was the favorite for the opening time trial of the Vuelta, like hands down. He didn't win it, but the guy is like he's a massive talent.
Big time trial talent. Yeah. Since a very young age, by the way, he's a time trialist. So, getting that close to Tarling was pretty good.
Some of the speeds too, like coming in, I think the stage 4 finish, it was like 80. They were going like 80 kilometers an hour, which is like 50 miles an hour
sometimes, and 1-2% downhill, and 56, 58 chain rings. That's the way it is right now. It's crazy.
Are they dangerous, the chain rings? I was thinking about this.
How are you going to stop this, Spencer? You can't say that you can't ride more than this. I mean, how are you going to do that?
They all roll out like juniors after every race.
I mean, it's professional riders. You can't say, hey, by the way, you can't ride that fast. You have to ride slower. That's a difficult one. Very difficult one. I do think, however, that there is something to it to being dangerous, and the high speeds in downhills. Because most of the guys can keep pedaling, so they get over climb, they keep pedaling, they're straight away super fast. And then on fast, flat downhills, it's crazy. The speeds are crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, even in these crosswinds, like there's crosswind sections on stage 4 where the front group's going 75 k an hour. So if you want to try to bridge that, what are you going to do? 85 kilometers an hour? Like the bridge, I think Merlier bridged, but he just sprinted across, and you only have a few seconds to do it.
Romeo try.
Yep.
Almost made it, and then finally didn't make it. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible.
It's kind of a boring race. I kind of like it. It's like laboratory racing. It's like these perfectly, like, no variable roads, and it's like, this is what happens in crosswinds. This is what a straight sprint looks like. This is summit finish with absolutely no kilojoules in the legs beforehand. So they have stage 6 on Saturday, and then stage 7, the uphill finish on Sunday.
That's Jebel Hafid. So Jebel Jais is usually that's the climb. That's a long climb. Steeper at the end, but not steep enough to make a big difference. But Jebel Hafid that's a proper climb. That's there's going to be differences there.
So let's take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, then we'll be back. So Johan, I want to talk about Ruta del Sol, Volta Andalusia, whatever we want to call it. If you remember last year, I was thinking
I always call it Ruta del Sol. It's been Ruta del Sol forever. Like when I was a young kid, it was Ruta del Sol. Since then they've called it Volta Andalusia, Ruta del Sol. But anybody who's been in cycling for a long time, it's Ruta del Sol.
Do you think they get paid to do that? Like, why change the name? Is that a deal with?
Well, I think they started calling it Vuelta Andalusia because the region Andalusia is paying a lot.
Yeah,
to get the race, so that's why they call it Vuelta Andalusia, Ruta del Sol.
The region looks fantastic. Great time of year for it to be on TV. If you're an American listener and you're wondering, where the heck are you guys watching these races? It's political at the moment, but Warner Brother Discovery's Max product in the U.S. has all 3 of these stage races this week. It's fantastic. Cannot recommend it enough. And you get other things on there too. It's not just cycling, but no free ads, but I'm watching these on Max. But Johan, Ruta del Sol, I'm not sure there's a peloton in this race. I've watched pretty much every minute of televised coverage of it. It looks fake. There's like 6 riders. As soon as you turn it on, it's breaking up so early. Today was a sprint finish. It was still kind of a small sprint finish though. Like, this is hard racing.
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, Spencer, it's not a big peloton, let's see how they're not that many.
I guess you're right. It's like 114 starters.
Yeah, wow. So there's still 105 riders in the race, so it's not a big peloton. And also, those roads, they're hard. I mean, even a flat stage, it's terrible there. I mean, even the stage that Pidcock won. I think there was 2 or 3 categorized climbs, but the amount of uncategorized climbs that have stretches of 10-15%, it's crazy. It's all the time up and down. It's very, very hard. It's hard riding. The road surface is not great. As soon as you take secondary roads, as you can see, it's narrow. It's rough. Plus, usually, it's also hot. And for this time of the year, it's probably for anybody who hasn't been either in Tour Down Under or Oman or Alula, it's the first real heat, which also sometimes is a struggle for a lot of people. Although, nowadays they do all do a lot of heat training, so they probably are used to it. But it's hard. It's rough terrain. And then on top of that, you have a few strong teams who really put the hurt on the peloton. So it's a race. As soon as it's really, really hard, there's 25 candidates.
So do you know who the defending champion of this race is? I was thinking, man, I don't remember this race happening last year. It's Maxime Van Hills.
And there was only one stage because there was a
5 kilometer long time trial.
There was a strike of the farmers, and I do remember that the race, the other stages had to be canceled because the police was not available in front of the area because they were all focusing on the strike of the farmers.
Yes,
they just did one stage, a 5 kilometer uphill time trial. And I guess Van Hills won, and Ayuso was second, and Tim Wellens third or something.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen here, but stage 1, if you have time, go back and watch stage 1 and 2. Pretty interesting stages, but Van Hills was on fire. Like, he got away with Wellens and Sivakov, and it looked like they were just like, we're going to do whatever we can to stay with you. They tried to attack through some roundabouts, didn't really work. Held on to him. And then stage 2, pretty interesting. Like, after looking that strong, and then Pidcock got worked over on stage 1, just couldn't hold the wheel, got dropped, lost time, comes back. I don't know. I don't know what's going through his mind, but Van Hills was feeling himself maybe a little too much, like 50K out on the front a lot on these roads that you're talking about, up, down, always difficult. And Pidcock attacks and drops him.
He also didn't have he didn't have any choice also because he was isolated. He had no teammates left.
Yeah. Well, my wife asked if he was racing this if Pidcock was racing alone at this race because she's seen another.
Van Gils. Van Gils didn't have any left when he was isolated, so he had to start. He had to start riding. Did a lot. Pidcock was collaborating quite a bit, but then at the last kilometer, last 500 meters actually of the last categorized climb, Pidcock just went with Enric Mas on the wheel, and Van Gils couldn't hold the wheel, and then in the downhill couldn't make it back.
When he was just right there, like they kind of went over and it was flat. It was like 7 seconds. Yeah. But he had the bad fortune of having, I feel like the Decathlon AG2R, it's like they're all over the place. They had a rider up the road, and the only person with Van Hills was a Decathlon rider. So he just was on his wheel. Yeah. Kind of had to sit up and wait for his team. Didn't have it. Once he couldn't make that bridge, he didn't really have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there, Van Hills lost the race there. He was super strong on stage 1. The stage that Pidcock won, he was strong also, but isolated, had to do too much work, and finally, had to surrender against, I have to say, a very strong Pavel Sivakov, because Sivakov was already doing a lot of work on stage 1 for Tim Wellens, who was, I guess, faster than Sivakov. Still couldn't beat Van Hills, but yesterday Sivakov was crazy strong. He was basically dropping everybody. It was only 2 guys who could follow him, and then finally Pidcock and Enric Mas joined after the last climb. But Sivakov was basically racing for GC, driving that 5-man breakaway, and well-deserved leader.
Yeah, the irony is it's like Pidcock, if you just were mildly paying attention, you'd be like, well, Pidcock's in the race lead, obviously. He was very active on stage 1, stage 2. It's like, no, Sivakov is probably going to, he's got a decent lead, 23 seconds on second, 32 seconds on Pidcock in third. No time trial, I believe. So
no time trial, no.
Yeah, they could be, UAE could win all 3 stage races this week. Just before we move on to the last one, which I think is probably the most interesting one, What happened to Enric Mas on stage one, Johan? He finished
7 minutes down.
7 minutes down, and then was in the break, got caught, and then finished with the leaders on stage two.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, first race of the year, I don't know what happened. They all react differently to their first competition. So I don't know. It was obviously, I guess once Enric Mas saw that he was not in Group 1 or Group 2, he probably sat up and didn't insist for the GC, right? I mean, he's not 7 minutes worse than these guys. And then said probably, okay, I'm going to try for a stage win or something. But yesterday he looked okay. He was in pretty good position yesterday.
Yeah, it's like Movistar, another team having a surprisingly good recovery from, you could say, a tough offseason, losing riders, not signing big names, but they've had a lot of people step up. Volta Algarve, the one I've been wanting to talk about. Stage one. Let's talk about stage one for a second. Supposed to be a sprint finish.
That's the kind of, I think that's going to be the joke of the season at this stage, Spencer. I don't know what else can go worse to be more of a joke than what happened in the final of stage one.
Well, so to give people context, you should watch this if you haven't seen it. They're coming into the sprint. They go through a roundabout with, what would you say, like 500 meters to go maybe? And they go around the right side. Some of them do. And I still don't fully understand what the plan was, because there's one guy that's kind of pointing the other way, but it's open. There's two sides of the road that are both open. They just naturally stay on the right. Almost the entire peloton goes. It's where the crowd is supposed to be, super dangerous. And there's a car parked there. The police car has to move, and they're going through full tilt because they think it's the sprint finish. Filippo Ganna is one of the only riders that goes on the correct side of the road, wins the race while riding parallel to the sprint finish, which is like getting more into crowded areas. And they see the finish line is on the other side. They probably realize, oh no, this isn't the finish. Ganna wins, but unfortunately it's revoked. Do you think Ganna should have been able to keep that win?
I think so. I think
so too.
I don't think they should have canceled the result, because, they should have put everybody in the same time for sure, right? Yeah. So nobody loses their chances, but Ganna and 10 or 20 other riders took the right side of the road. So the left side of the road, but the correct side of the road, I would say. And Ganna won the stage. The rest of the riders made a mistake. You could argue, okay, this is obviously an organizer's mistake. I would say yes, it's true. This exit should have been closed off. That it should not have been possible for any rider to go there, because if you look at the images, there's a policeman there standing and he's waving, kind of waving this way, but the whole peloton, anyways.
Well, and the moto goes through, which is like,
that's the deviation, right? It's the deviation.
Yeah.
It's a deviation which is kind of far from the finish, but the irony is that first of all, the UCI and the commissaires and the organization says, okay, it's the rider's fault. Technically, it is the rider's fault, right? Because if you look at the rules, the rules clearly say that the rider is supposed to know the course. If it's not themselves, it's the Now, ironically, it's the rider of Lotto, who is the first guy who was leading out the lead, who takes this wrong side of the road, and then the whole peloton follows. Now, the Lee gave an interview and said, and blames his own teammate. First, I don't think he knew when he gave the interview. I don't think he knew it was his teammate. He didn't probably see it, but he says, this one guy takes the wrong side and the whole peloton follows. Him being one of them, by the way. Now, the funny thing is that in that same interview, he says, well, yesterday we came to check out the finish, and we knew it was to the left. It's to prove that when the riders really, because sometimes they say, riders have to be more careful. They have to check if there's an obstacle or not. When you're full gas and when your heart rate is 180, 190, right? And you're there. You just go wherever there's a place. It needs, in that case, it needs to be more guided. There should not have been this possibility to take this right side of the road. It should have been blocked off. Very simple. But even in the case of stage one, Lotto and a lot of other teams, because for sure they were all close by, they went to check out the course. Even the guys who are not going to check it now, with all the technology, with Google Earth, with VeloViewer, they know in detail what's going to happen in the team buses. Every team with a sprinter and a sprinter strain, they have it up there and on a big screen. This is the way we're going. We're kind of here. We got a roundabout. It's to the left. They all know, and still they went the wrong way. So it was weird to see. Again, I think it should have been closed off, and nobody should have had the option to go there, because there should have been like a gradual, because obviously they came from 2 times 2 lanes to 1 time 2 lanes, right? So, but they should have been gradual, and that they should not have been the option to get on the right side of the roundabout should not have existed. That would have solved the problem.
Yeah, it does show you that all this preparation can be completely useless, because once the blood's flowing, once you're in it, you're like, you're not even thinking. You're just following
even all
people.
These sprinters. I mean, like Jordi Meus, the guy who won the stage today, I think he was like the first of the peloton on the right side of the road. I mean, I'm sure they have checked out the course. They have, in the meeting in the morning, studied the course. But yet one guy takes their own way and everybody just follows, because there's no time to react. You're with the adrenaline, you're fighting with the knife between the teeth, so to speak. And you just follow the wheel in front of you.
It's kind of a strange precedent, because you're right. Technically the riders just went off the road, off the course. Ghana wins. They strip the win, but like, what happens if someone's in a breakaway with 15K left and the breakaway goes off the road the wrong way? Do they nullify that now? Like, I don't really. The whole thing is kind of weird.
There's no consistency in applying the rules. It's a pure interpretation in the moment. I think the fact that the victory was stripped of Ghana is not right. He did nothing wrong. He won the race. That's it. And circumstances are part of bike racing. Yeah,
didn't Marco Pantani won a Tour de France where half the peloton didn't finish, and they didn't strip it. It's just that he won against the people that were there. Shockingly, and before we move on, are there more weird things happening, or are we just seeing more of these races that aren't as buttoned up as, like, let's say, the Tour de France?
Well, we see. Obviously, we spoke about Étoile de Bessèges, where the cars were there. Then speed bump in Tour de la Provence. Now Algarve today. I also saw in Tour of Ruta del Sol, it was a bunch sprint, and also 200 meters before the finish on a straight, there was a real speed bump. Nothing happened, but because it's a small bunch and everybody was lined up already, but you can't know that. I mean, it can be 10 wide. You don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I keep repeating, and I've actually seen. I don't know if they listen to our podcast or not. I'm going to guess not, but I've seen comments identical to what I said in our former podcast, that this safe arting has to be completely independent of everything. And I think John Degenkolb and another guy, I forgot who it was now, have given an interview about that they want a really independent organization to check out, control, and approve the courses. And I think that's what needs to happen. It needs to be completely independent of the UCI.
Yeah, and it would, in some ways, I mean, my pushback is like, why would the UCI do this? It's a pain in their butt. No one's going to care. But like, it would have helped Algarve, because they would have said, I don't know about this finish. Maybe let's retool this, and they wouldn't have had the embarrassment they had.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, I'm going to answer you, Spencer. I mean, you know how critical I am of the UCI, so I have to take the opportunity to say that. Why would the UCI want to do this? It's very simple. They want complete power. They want to give nothing out of their hands, and anything that is not under their total control will not be approved as being valid.
What does that mean? Like, what if the move like launched a tour of Germany and we had $600 million in funding and it wasn't sanctioned by the UCI? Like, what would be the downside of that?
Okay, here I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. There's plenty of initiatives been like that in the past. It's still going on with One Cycling, for example. Anything that is not sanctioned by them, controlled by them, licensed by them, and approved by them, they will say very simple. Okay, every rider who participates in that race cannot participate in our races. They're going to be fined, and then they're going to put pressure on on their direct members, which are the national federation. They're going to say these riders who participate there are not allowed to take part in the World Championships, for example, because that's the race that they organize and they own. So it's going to be a whole list of pressure and blackmailing and bullying to make sure that nobody participates unless they get brought to the table and ultimately get total control of any other parallel event. That's what's going to happen.
Really, the king on the chessboard here is the Tour de France, because if you bought the Tour and you could create your own racing series, who cares? You're not okay. I can't go to the World Championships, and you're paying people. Let's say Pogačar gets 30 million euros a year to race in this new series, and it includes the Tour. He's going to do that. He's not going to do the UCI's calendar. But
yeah, well, I think it's going to take some time. Ultimately, it's always been said in cycling. In cycling, it's not possible. It's not going to happen. It's always impossible until somebody makes it possible, right? So I think, and that's why I think that in the long term, a project like One Cycling will succeed eventually, especially because it's Saudi money, and we all know how much money they have, unlimited amounts of money. And also what they have is patience. They know that money ultimately, if you are there pushing with the money, ultimately somebody's going to bend over. And I think that One Cycling is going to start at some point, initially as a subdivision with, kind of the approval of the UCI. But ultimately, I think the Saudis are going to get to a point where they buy the Tour de France. That's going to happen. But it's in the next 5 or 10 years, but ultimately that's going to happen. It's probably not going to be the Saudis directly. It's probably going to be a subdivision. It's going to need to be a French company, because France is not going to want that a foreign owner is a proper owner of the Tour de France. But probably the Saudis are going to have a French company make a deal with them and have them buy it. That's what I foresee will happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Pretty interesting prediction, because if you've been paying attention to golf, LIV is what I just described, basically, like the moves, Tour of Germany, but you're banned from all the UCI races.
Well, just for us, for me, let's say Lance and I do it. We don't care because we're already banned for life.
You're already banned, but I wonder if the riders would mind. But it is kind of an interesting thing to think about, because that was what LIV was like. It was like seen as a joke. They paid people much money, but if you've been paying close attention, the Saudis were just patient. And now, I don't know, I don't want to get too political here. Like their person is now in charge of approving the deal. Like they're going to essentially buy the PGA Tour, but it's in a sort of convoluted way where they're merging with the PGA Tour and giving them a cash injection. But they're going to have, I think, the majority of board votes on the PGA. Mm-hmm. They're going to control the organization, and they're going to get what they wanted. And it took long, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of money.
It didn't take that long, Spencer.
What 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Okay, that's nothing.
But most organizations would not have the freedom to be like, we're going to burn $1 billion, and it's going to look bad. And
they can,
yeah,
and they will.
I think that LIV got clowned quite a lot, quite hard, but I think it's going to end up being quite a deft investment, and they're going to end up controlling what they wanted to control.
But Spencer, if you think about LIV, for example, I don't know, I don't remember all the details now, but didn't all the players who participated in that were threatened to be not be able to participate in any other events?
Yes.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. It's very similar.
Yeah.
And they had to create new events that had no prestige and no one watched them. And it still is going to work out, which is impressive. But so stage 2, Algarve, so this is a summit finish, and it has Primož Roglič, Jonas Vingegaard. You're thinking, well, I know how this is going to go. Roglič is going to win. Jonas is second. No, that's not what happened. It was really undulating. It was not a straightforward summit finish. Very interesting to watch. Jonas was isolated quite early. Primož was isolated. Jan Christen attacks from UAE. And if you don't, I think he's 20 years old. He's like one of, they're like, they just keep pumping out these crazy stars that are 2021. And it looks like he's going to win. He's dropping Laurens de Plus from Ineos, who was also up the road. It looks like, well, you're going to have the main contenders finish 7 or so seconds back, and we're going to move on to the next few stages. João Almeida flies out of this peloton so fast. Like, it almost looked fake, like CGI.
That was really impressive, because if you look at the time differences, the last kilometer, you say, okay, nobody's coming back.
It looks impossible.
I think it was still about 15, 20 seconds. Christen is obviously a winner. When he attacked, you could see that was for the win. I think probably in the last 300 meters, Spencer, I think Almeida made up 100 meters in 300 meters time.
Yeah.
It was crazy how fast it came.
Yeah. So he essentially rode 400 meters in the same time that his teammate rode 300 meters, which is almost impossible. He comes up to him so fast. Christen looked confused. He's like, what the heck's happening? I think he thought that Almeida was going to pass him, and Almeida could have passed him. I was wondering, like, is he going to push him? Like, we got to keep going, man. They're coming behind. Like, I don't even know if that's legal to do. He let him win. I think Christen was thinking, it's kind of a bummer. I was hoping to win this overall. And now João's here.
No, because Christen said before after he said that Almeida is the number one leader. Logical, he's a really good rider. It's in Portugal. But Christen, today, I heard his interview after the stage, and that was a different interview. He said that tomorrow, probably going to keep the jersey, and then he's going to give it all in the time trial. It's the last time. The last day is the time trial, right?
Yeah, it's a hard time. It's 17. Undulating.
And of course, it's his right. He's in the lead and individual time trial. You would think that Almeida's a better time trialist than Jan Christen. On top of that, he's in Portugal. Yesterday's performance at the end proves that he's in super good shape. So I think he's the favorite. Although guys like Primož and Jonas are not that far off, knowing that it's 20K, the last 3 kilometers uphill. We don't know. We don't know who's going to win. I'm still thinking Almeida is in pole position to win.
So he's 4 seconds back of his teammate. He's probably going to take those 4 seconds on him. Mm-hmm. De Plus is 13 seconds back on the lead. I don't know about that. Morgado, 20 seconds back. Vingegaard, 20 seconds back. That's a lot. That's a lot to make up. And
so that's 16 seconds on Almeida?
16 seconds on Almeida.
It's a lot and not a lot at the same time. Hey, if Jonas does the time trial that he did in the Tour 2 years ago, it's game and nobody's on the picture,
Yeah. Well, you're going to bring me to my last. It is. So the last 2K of that TT is 9.3%. Mm-hmm. So that's where the race is going to be decided. Whoever has the legs is going to win. It does, like, Jonas is clearly not on Tour level. Primož Roglič, in the past, I'd say 2023 to 2019, probably would have blitzed this, won this.
Yeah.
Since he made the move, and I mean, he also has just gotten older. He's like 35 years old now. But he moved to Red Bull last year. Not been as strong, like, in quotes, in these early season races. I got 10th at Paris-Nice last year. Clearly was fine. Went on to win the Volta. We don't know what he would have done on the Tour, but he didn't finish because he crashed. Like, just hasn't been as sharp in the early season races. But if you look back to 2019, I mean, he was maybe the strongest I've ever seen anyone in the early season 1 week races.
In those races, he was unbeatable.
And then he wilted at the Giro d'Italia in the tail end of it. So it's possible that these guys have, there's some strategy they have. I probably wouldn't read too much into it. I'm pretty down on Almeida after the most recent
Valencia.
That I feel like highlighted some problems that he's not really addressed, but he could win this race, and then everyone will be talking about Almeida. What's Almeida going to do? Is he going to win the Tour? Having said that, that was unbelievable yesterday. That was crazy in the last few hundred meters. And then Jordi Mayos wins the sprint finish today. Pretty technical. There's a big crash into a concrete wall. I mean, in a perfect world, they'd put some pads on there. Biniam Girmay second, Arnaud Delis third, and Wout van Aert kind of looked like he was contesting it, but was pretty far back.
Positions,
finished seventh. Well, we'll see. I mean, tomorrow actually is interesting. There's no more summit finishes. I feel like in the past there was a second summit finish.
There was in the past there was two hard stages. Yesterday's stage was the hardest one of the whole race. Tomorrow normally it's bunch sprint, and then it's all down to the time trial.
So there's a climb. It's not really that big of a climb though, like 20 kilometers from the finish line. Probably, especially with how good some of these sprinters are at climbing at this race, probably will be a bunch sprint. Mm-hmm. But let's take a quick break, Johan, and then let's talk about Astana and then Viviani signing for Lotto. Well, today there was also another race. It was a classic VAR, Tour de VAR, Johan, in France, and it was won by an Astana rider. I can't find his name at the moment.
Cristiano Scaroni.
Yeah, not a prolific winner, you'd say, but it highlights this is their first race win of the year. They haven't won a lot, but they have scored a lot of points. They're like Forrest Gump. You look back through all this footage of the season so far, and there's like 4 or 5 Astana riders in every league group. They're not even really trying to win a lot of the races. They're sprinting for like 3rd through 6th because they want to rack up points, because they are, if we look at the relegation standings right now, this is the most up to date too. So this is even including their strong start to the season. Cofidis is the last place team with 19,215 points. Astana is the 21st place team with 15,600 points. They'll have more because they just won today. It's not tallied yet, but that means they have a lot, like nearly 4,000 points to make up on Astana to get to 18, which is the last spot. Going to be difficult. But if we look at the rankings just from this year, the second, I've moved away from my rankings. I'll tell you just off the top of my mind, but the second place team is Astana. First place is UAE. Third place Movistar. Fourth place Red Bull. So that's pretty impressive, especially since they've only won one race. It shows you how effective they are at poaching these points without winning.
Yeah, you can see all the races, Spencer. Every single race, they have the opportunity. They have 2 or 3 guys going for it. Winning is actually not the main goal. It's having 3 guys scoring as many points possible. For the moment, they've made up. If they had 5,000 points, if they were 5,000 points behind Cofidis, who's their main rival, for the relegation. They've made up 1,000 points already, so they're 4,000 points behind them now. They started off crazy strong in every single race. I don't think that they can keep that pace, and that finally they're not gonna unless something really bad happens to Cofidis. But I think it's Astana and Arkea who are gonna fall down to 2nd division, and that Cofidis will remain in the 1st division. Obviously, they are trying everything they can. At the same time, they also know that if they are relegated, they want to make sure they're 1st or 2nd of the pro team category. There they have rivals as Tudor, as Uno X, as Q36.5 with Pidcock now. So they want to be in the top 2, because the top 2 gives automatic entry. Even if you're not in the World Tour, you get automatic entry to all the Grand Tours and all the World Tour races. So basically, it's a cheaper way to be in the World Tour without being a World Tour team. So I think that's really their main goal. Now, if the new sponsor is going to be happy with that, I don't know. I've heard, and this is a rumor. Okay, it's not confirmed, So there was a lot of talks about XDS. What is it? XDS Carbon Factory or
XDS Carbon Tech, maybe.
Yeah, Chinese carbon manufacturer coming on as the main sponsor and actually trying to buy the license of Astana and becoming a Chinese team. If you look, that hasn't happened yet. It's still a Kazakh team. So the Kazakh owners of the license haven't sold the license yet to the Chinese. I think that's going to be in a second phase, and depending on how hungry this Chinese new investor is. I think the fact that they started with Astana, they're probably going to stay with Astana. Now, I've also heard that so the license has not been sold. It's still a Kazakh team. I've also heard, and this is even more a rumor, not confirmed at all, but that the deal is only for 1 year for the moment, and that afterwards they would see or renegotiate whether they're in the World Tour or not. So I don't know what Vingegaard has promised them, that say, okay, we're going to be in the World Tour, don't worry about it. I don't know what the deal is there, but it's for sure that they're trying everything they can to get every point. They're doing a good job for the moment, but I do think, however, that they cannot keep this pace through the whole season, and that it's not going to be enough to be in the top 18 and be a World Tour team in 2026 and 2027 and 2028, because that's the whole thing, right? If you're World Tour, you have your license for 3 years, guaranteed. If you're relegated to the pro teams, you need to fight every single year to be top 2. Now, if you have a good enough team, of course, you would say, okay, it's doable, but it's not a guarantee. Every year you have to prove yourself again. You need to be top 2, and then the competition of Tudor and X and Q36.5 is definitely tough.
Yes. And these tactics that we're talking about where they stack, I don't know, the last half of the top 10, that becomes less effective as the season goes on. It just becomes harder to do that. There's just not as many lower level races where you can rack up a bunch of points relative to the top level races. And they probably don't have the top talent to, like I was saying to you off mic, Johan, they would to pass Cofidis, who's having a good season, by the way. They're 9th in the World Tour rankings currently. Yeah, this year. They would have to have roughly the same season points-wise that Alpecin de Koenig had last year, which was they won multiple monuments, 3 monuments, multiple tour stages. And that's if Cofidis had the same season they had last year.
And a bad season.
Probably have a better season. So, yeah, if Vingegaard told them that they're going to be in the World Tour, I hope they didn't believe it, because I'm sure they have calculators at XDS headquarters and they could figure out that was going to be difficult. But does Vingegaard own the team?
He doesn't own the team. No, he's the manager. Anyways, the status of Vingegaard in Kazakhstan is, untouchable. He's God. He's Olympic champion. Even he was a great cyclist, right? I mean, he won a lot of big races. And he's God there. Cannot do anything wrong. Whatever he has done wrong has been forgiven multiple times. I always say, I don't know how many lives a cat has. Normally, is it 7 lives a cat?
Yeah, 9 lives.
Vingegaard has more lives than a cat. But he's there, and I don't know if. I think they're holding on to this license so much, and Vingegaard is probably pushing towards that, because, listen, once the Chinese have ownership of the team, they're going to bring in their own people gradually, and sooner or later Vingegaard is going to be out. That's sure. That's the way it works. So I think that's why he is, kind of navigating a fine line. He's doing a good job for the moment in protecting his own position, I have to say.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I thought he was done like 2 years ago when they had the Canadians coming in.
How about 10 years ago?
I mean, that's still unbelievable. When you were running the team, and I was like, Vingegaard was never coming back, and then he came back. I mean, but one thing that they're doing a good job of getting points. They have a good chance of finishing in the top 2, which is good, because as you said, you get auto invites to all these races, but you don't have to go. So you can turn down invitations to preserve money and just the energy of your team, it's actually a pretty good place to be. Israel Premier Tech has done a really good job, or it's worked out well for them. Same thing with Lotto. It's worked out really well for them. But the thing that really insulates you from problems is money. Like, think about Ineos. They had a terrible season last year, their worst season ever. They still finished ahead of every pro team. So as long as you're investing in the team, which I assume XDS is willing to do based on statements, they probably could survive 3 years in the second division and never finish outside the top two.
That's not sure. Again, both, we know that both, especially those two teams, and actually the three, Q36.5, Tudor, and UNOX are three really ambitious projects, and also with deep pockets, also with a lot of money. I want to see once they're not in the World Tour anymore, if XDS is really going to put all that money, putting all that money down.
Well, that is a problem.
That's what I'm not sure.
Yeah, because that's how you get to a death spiral, because you're not scoring points, thus you're not getting invitations. And then there's a team I'm thinking of, I don't want to say their name, but this happened to a team recently, and then they shut the team down. Because what's the point? You're still spending quite a bit of money, but you're not at any race that anyone cares about.
Well, I mean, I do think, however, that Vingegaard is in a good spot with the Chinese, because he's still very active as an athlete. I think he's won the World Championships triathlon in his age category a few years ago. So he's super, super fit, and he is, very, very fond of his status of Olympic champion. He was when they were on Specialized, when they were on, I would say they were on Wheeler, right? Until last year on Wheeler.
Yeah.
He made it a point that he always had to get a golden bike. And my information says that the XDS, they have produced a golden bike for him. So he's still highly considered.
If I won an Olympic gold medal, it's the first thing you would hear. I would talk about it nonstop. So I sympathize with that. That was an amazing win, by the way. We should ask Bradley about it, but the Team GB was so confident. Like, we're going to control this race. It's going to be a sprint no matter what. It's like, you guys they only have like, how many people on an Olympic team? 5 people? Like, what was the plan? That seemed a little overconfident.
Wasn't that the Olympics that that was actually, it was in London, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in London.
Wasn't that the Olympics that were run all of a sudden with 200 meters? So looked on the wrong side of the road, and
seemed to forget where he was. Seemed to get lost in the West.
He lost his control of the race, but his wallet was wide open.
He might have been reaching back to like give his routing number to someone that he was in the breakaway with. We don't. This is a joke. We don't know if this is true. Don't sue us, Rigoberto, please. And then one bit of news before we leave. I thought this was interesting. I didn't know this happened. You had to tell me. Elia Viviani, who had not signed a contract, was on Ineos last year. They let it lapse. It just expired. He didn't sign with anyone. Signed by Lotto now.
Last minute.
What do you make of this?
Well, it's first of all, I think it's a cheap way to get a high pedigree rider. He can still win races, probably not top races anymore. But I think above all, he can be of high value in the sprint train for Arnaud Delis. Whenever he's not sprinting for himself, he can probably teach Delis, calm him down, give him good guidance in races and lead ups to the sprint. And I think it's a cheap option to add a well recognized rider sprinter with a big palmarès.
Yeah, I saw that like Q36.5 was rumored to be signing him. I didn't love that, because if you sign him and you're like, okay, let's go score points, we need points. I don't know if that's going to be a great relationship, but for what they need from him, like Lotto has a year off. They don't have to score a lot of points because they're so far ahead. They're going to get promoted. The pressure's not on.
Well, Spencer, yes and no. Let's not forget one thing. It's not because you're in like that first year starts to count for the 3 years. Yeah. Because if like 2025, the points you score, the licenses are going to be given, but you need, it's going to again be, the next 3 years.
Wait, no, sorry. They do reset.
Yeah, they do reset. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah.
But if they weren't going to get promoted,
exactly, yeah,
it wouldn't matter because but they're so far ahead.
No, they're getting promoted for sure.
Yeah, the pressure's not really on them, and if they just want to develop Deli and they think he's a good lead out rider, I like it.
Yeah,
I'm sure they got a good deal by waiting.
News, but if you look at it, it's not a bad idea.
Well, do you have anything else, Johan? So we have all these races we talked about are running Saturday and Sunday, and then we'll be back on Monday to discuss them.
To talk about UAE Tour and a roundup of all these races. Yeah, yes. That's it for me, Spencer.
Okay. And if you want to get a bunch of discounts, be a premium member of We Do, get my newsletter, remember to sign up. I will put a link in the show notes here, and you can have a We Do membership. We have not been promoting that, but it does offer good value. There's new discounts in there in the members portal. Right now, we'll be adding some interactive element as well in the very near future. We have to figure out the technical side of that, but you will be able to interact with the Move hosts, and that should be fun. But thanks, Johan, and we will be back on Monday with a third guest. The special guest. We don't want to reveal their name yet, but they will be on with us to talk about these races.
Okay. Thanks, Spencer.